In 1973, a single dollar bill could buy you a pound of ground beef. Yet, for a family of 5 struggling to make ends meet, that dollar might as well have been a mountain. This was an era defined by a quiet, kitchen table desperation, where American mothers were forced to transform sheer ingenuity into survival. They took the humblest staples, white bread, granulated sugar, and a bit of kitchen magic, to create snacks that did more than just stop a child's stomach from growling. These recipes kept bellies full and family dignity intact. Image of a 1970s American kitchen with linoleum floors and wood grain cabinets. Today, we are looking back at the culinary landscape of a forgotten America. Number 14 on our list was so ubiquitous in working-class neighborhoods that historians believe half the country ate it at least once a week. Though today, many would be too embarrassed to admit it ever touched their lips. Number 7 was actually championed by school nurses in 1971 as a legitimate, healthy after-school option. And then there is number 3, the one kids fought over, begged for, and still see in their dreams decades later, a snack with a flavor chemistry so specific that modern food scientists admit no laboratory has ever successfully replicated it. These 25 snacks didn't disappear because they were unpalatable. They vanished because a multi-billion-dollar industry spent decades convincing us that real food only comes in a crinkling plastic bag featuring a colorful cartoon mascot. Before we dive into this countdown, take a moment to subscribe, because the memories we're about to stir up might just send you straight to your pantry. These are the 25 forgotten poor man's snacks of the 1970s that nobody makes anymore. Number 25. Sugar bread. If you spent your childhood in a working-class household during the 1970s, the sight of a loaf of Wonder Bread likely triggers a very specific memory. At the time, a loaf of white bread cost about 28 cents. It was soft, pillowy, and as white as a summer cloud. You'd take a slice of Wonder Bread, soft and white as a cloud. It was spread thick with margarine, using Blue Bonnet, Land O'Lakes, or whatever was on sale, and then sprinkled generously with white granulated sugar. Once the bread was coated, you'd reach for the 5-pound bag of white granulated sugar, which cost less than $1 and was expected to last the entire month. You'd sprinkle the sugar generously across the margarine. The magic happened in the seconds that followed. The soft bread fibers would begin to absorb the fat from the margarine, while the sugar crystals would partially dissolve at the edges where they met the grease, creating a crystalline, sweet and salty crunch. Nobody called this a recipe. No one ever wrote it down in a leather-bound book. It was simply the default choice when the cupboards were bare. While modern parents might view sugar bread with nutritional horror, the generation that grew up eating it every single week turned out just fine. Number 24. Saltines and Karo syrup. In 1970, a 16-ounce bottle of corn syrup cost just 49 cents. And in a house with 4 hungry kids, a little bit had to go a long way. This was the lean times version of dessert. You'd pull a sleeve of saltines from the back of the pantry and carefully arrange them. There was a slow, viscous stream of dark Karo syrup snaking across the top of the crackers. The syrup would pool in the tiny docking holes of the saltine, soaking in just enough to create a sticky sweet bond without turning the cracker into a soggy mess. Because it was the dark variety of Karo, it possessed a deep, molasses-like undertone that transformed the humble saltine into something reminiscent of gingerbread. With a box of saltines running about 39 cents, you could provide a sweet treat for an entire neighborhood of kids for less than $1. It is a snack born of necessity that many still crave today, even if they no longer have to eat it. Number 23. Fried bologna cups. Bologna was the great economic equalizer of the 1970s. At 89 cents a pound, it was the foundational lunch meat that fueled an entire generation. But the snack version, the one children actually requested, required a skillet and a bit of heat. You'd drop a thick cut slice into a dry pan over medium-high heat and wait. Image of a fried bologna slice curling into a cup in a skillet. Within about 90 seconds, the physical properties of the meat would change. The edges would pull away from the center, causing the slice to buckle and warp into a perfect, edible cup. That cup got filled with mustard, ketchup, or Velveeta if you had it. If you did not, it was served with nothing at all. Children would eat these standing right over the stove, burning their fingertips in their haste. This snack vanished as deli meat prices climbed and processed food became a term people only used in whispers. Number 22. Peanut butter and banana sandwiches. Long before these were associated with the excess of Graceland, they were a staple for struggling families across the American South. In the mid-70s, a bunch of bananas was a steal at about 15 cents a pound, and a jar of peanut butter was 65 cents, a jar that was expected to provide protein for 2 full weeks. The construction was simple: white bread, a thick layer of peanut butter, and slices of overripe banana. As the fruit sat against the bread, it would soften, becoming almost creamy where it made contact with the peanut butter. The sweetness of the fruit was the perfect foil for the dense, sticky fat of the nuts. For a deluxe version, families would melt a knob of butter in a hot pan and fry the sandwich until it turned golden brown. The bananas would caramelize. The peanut butter would turn into a warm, molten sauce. And for about 20 cents in materials, you had a meal that felt like a luxury. Number 21. Mayonnaise on white bread. This is the one that causes modern Americans to recoil. And that reaction is perhaps the clearest indicator of how far we've moved away from the reality of honest poverty. In the 70s, a jar of Hellmann's was 77 cents. Bread was the one thing that was always there. When the refrigerator held nothing, no meat, no cheese, no leftovers, you made a mayonnaise sandwich. 2 slices of bread, a heavy spread of mayo on both sides, and a dusting of salt and pepper. The high fat content of the mayonnaise made the bread feel substantial in your stomach, while the salt and the tang of the vinegar woke up your taste buds enough to trick your brain into thinking you'd had a real meal. Families with a backyard garden might add a thick slice of a sun-ripened tomato, but that was considered the high-end version. People don't talk about this snack anymore because hunger is often kept private. But those who lived through it remember the taste vividly, and they remember it without a shred of shame. Number 20. Vienna sausages. A tin of Armour Vienna sausages cost a mere 29 cents in 1975. Inside, that small, pull tab can sat 7 small, rubbery sausages submerged in a pale, slightly gelatinous brine. To a modern eye, it looks industrial. To a child in 1975, it was a protein-packed windfall. Image of a small tin of Vienna sausages being opened. Generations of American children would peel back that lid and, without a second thought, drink the salty brine before fishing out the sausages with their fingers. 7 small, rubbery sausages sat in a pale, slightly gelatinous brine. It was a brine that generations of American children drank without thinking twice. The snap of the skin was unmistakable, and the interior was dense and salty with a flavor profile that doesn't exist in the modern snack aisle. These lived in every pantry as the ultimate fallback. The thing you opened when the milk was gone and payday was still 3 days away. They still exist on store shelves. But in the 70s, that little can was the physical proof that everything was going to be okay until Friday. Number 19. Potted meat on crackers. A small, rectangular tin of potted meat was a bargain at 19 cents in 1972. You'd take a butter knife and spread the contents onto saltines. often finishing it with a jagged line of yellow mustard. The meat was a smooth, spreadable paste, the color of a manila envelope, carrying a powerful punch of salt, smoke, and a distinct livery undertone. On a cracker, that intensity worked perfectly. One tin could feed 2 children. 2 tins could feed an entire family. Those who ate this didn't bother asking about the ingredients. In those days, asking questions cost money you didn't have. These tins are still found on the bottom shelves of grocery stores today, but the cultural knowledge of how to turn them into a satisfying afternoon snack is nearly extinct. The Great Snack Shift. Part 1. This is where the story takes a corporate turn. In 1971, Frito-Lay spent a staggering $47 million on advertising. To put that in perspective, that was more than the entire gross domestic product of some small nations. They weren't just selling corn chips. They were selling a psychological shift. They wanted to convince the American public that real snacking was something that happened out of a bag, not something you assembled in your own kitchen. The snacks on this list cost pennies and took 30 seconds to make. They were real because they consisted of actual bread, fat, and salt. Because the snack industry couldn't find a way to profit from sugar bread or fried bologna, they didn't try to compete with them. Instead, they used marketing to replace them. They framed packaged snacks as modern and convenient. While homemade poor man's food was framed as something to be outgrown, America did get richer in the decades that followed. But we were wrong to assume that richer always meant better. Number 18. Bread and milk. This was the ultimate empty pantry comfort food. You'd take stale white bread, tear it into irregular chunks, and drop them into a bowl. Then, you'd pour warm whole milk over the top and add a spoonful of sugar. You ate it with a spoon, like a cross between cereal and soup. In the South, some families swapped the sugar for a pinch of salt. In the Midwest, many used buttermilk, which gave the dish a tangy, thick, and almost sophisticated character. A loaf of bread was 28 cents, and a half gallon of milk was 65 cents. This was the evening snack for when there was no budget for dessert. Or the quiet, late-night meal an elderly grandmother would prepare for herself after the rest of the house had gone to bed. There is a primal comfort in warm milk and soft bread that no engineered, neon orange snack chip has ever been able to replicate. Number 17. Cinnamon sugar toast. To make this, you'd butter a slice of bread on one side and then prepare the mixture. 4 parts white sugar to 1 part ground cinnamon. It had to be more sugar than cinnamon. That was the golden rule. Image of a slice of cinnamon sugar toast bubbling under a broiler flame. You'd coat the buttered bread and slide it under the broiler for exactly 90 seconds. You had to watch through the oven window, because at 91 seconds, the transition from perfect to burned was absolute. When it emerged, the sugar had caramelized into a crunchy, glass-like crust at the edges while remaining gooey in the center. The heat caused the cinnamon to bloom, filling the kitchen with an aroma that felt far more expensive than its 4-cent price tag. This was the snack for rainy days, for when a child was homesick, or for when the family budget said no but the heart said treat. It's a lost art now, largely because we apparently no longer have 90 seconds to stand by an oven. Number 16. Peanut butter crackers with a raisin. The recipe was the title. 1 Ritz cracker, a dollop of peanut butter, and a single raisin pressed into the center. In the 70s, a box of Ritz was 44 cents, peanut butter was 65 cents, and a small box of raisins was 29 cents, for a total of 1.38. You could produce about 40 individual snacks. This was the staple of American church basements and school cafeterias. That single raisin was the garnish that made the snack feel finished. Without it, it was just a cracker. With it, it was an hors d'oeuvre. To a 7-year-old in 1974, that distinction was everything. It was a tiny bit of culinary theater performed on a budget. Number 15. Deviled ham on crackers. The Underwood Red Devil was the silent mascot of the 1970s pantry. A tin cost 35 cents and contained a peppery, spreadable ham paste that could cover half a sleeve of saltines. The flavor was aggressive and unapologetic. Cured ham ground down with mustard and a secret blend of spices until it reached a consistency somewhere between a spread and a paste. You'd eat it in a single bite, straight from the tin if nobody was watching. While deviled ham is still available, the ritual of opening that small tin after school, with the grinning red devil looking up at you, has largely faded from the American childhood experience. Number 14. Cornbread crumbled into cold milk. If you have roots in the American South or Appalachia, you don't need a narrator to explain this one. You're probably already reaching for a glass. Image of a glass filled with milk and crumbled yellow cornbread being eaten with a spoon. The cornbread would soften within 30 seconds. As it swelled and absorbed the cold milk, it was often eaten for supper on sweltering summer nights when the thought of turning on the stove felt like a punishment. If you ask anyone who grew up in a Southern household in the 70s about this, just watch their face. The memory is written in their eyes. The Great Snack Shift. Part 2. The United States government was well aware of these eating habits. By 1975, the USDA was actively tracking the diets of low-income American families. The data was sobering. Working-class households were spending an average of just $1.64 per person per day on all food. That includes breakfast, lunch, dinner, and every snack in between. By that same year, food stamp usage had reached 17 million Americans. These poor man's snacks weren't a result of a lack of culinary imagination or laziness. They were the product of a refined, survivalist creativity. Every snack on this list represents a family navigating a difficult economy with whatever tools they had left in the drawer. Number 13. Tomato sandwiches. There was a strict rule for this one. It could only happen in the summer. A true 1970s tomato sandwich required a garden tomato. Thick-walled, heavy, and still warm from the sun. Not the pale, mealy versions found in supermarkets. You'd take white bread, a thick layer of Hellmann's on both sides, salt, pepper, and 3 slices of tomato so large they hung off the crust. You'd press the sandwich down and eat it immediately, usually standing over the kitchen sink. Because the juice was guaranteed to ruin whatever shirt you were wearing. Since tomato seeds cost almost nothing, nearly every working-class family with a patch of dirt grew their own. In August of 1974, this sandwich cost about 6 cents to produce. Without that homegrown tomato, it was just bread and mayo. With it, it was the taste of August. Number 12. Pork rinds from the gas station jar. Before they were sold in nitrogen-flushed plastic bags, pork rinds lived in large, heavy glass jars on the counters of service stations. You'd flip back the hinged lid, reach in, and drop a nickel on the laminate counter. These rinds had a wildly inconsistent texture, ranging from airy and light to dangerously chewy. They tasted distinctly of pork and salt, lacking the artificial barbecue or chili lime powders of today. When modern convenience stores replaced the old-school gas stations, the jars disappeared, and with them, the tactile experience of reaching into that glass container for a 5-cent snack. Number 11. Government peanut butter. If your family qualified for commodity food distribution in the 70s, you knew the silver can.
Number 11.
Image of a silver industrial-style can of peanut butter with a butter knife stirring the oil on top. It was a large, institutional tin with black stenciled letters that simply read, "Peanut butter." This wasn't your typical store-bought spread. It was denser, more intensely flavored, and lacked any added sugar. Because it was natural, the oil would separate and sit in a pool at the top. Stirring it with a butter knife was a mandatory household ritual. You'd spread it on saltines, white bread, or apple slices. Today, this exact type of natural peanut butter is marketed as a premium health product and sold for 3 times the price of commercial brands. In 1973, it was the government-issued staple that kept millions of children from going to bed hungry. Number 10. Fried dough, flour, salt, baking powder, and water. That was it. You'd pat the simple dough thin and drop it into a heavy skillet filled with hot oil. It would puff up and turn golden in 90 seconds per side, creating a crackling exterior and a soft, chewy heart. You'd eat it plain, or if you were lucky, with a dusting of powdered sugar or a drizzle of sorghum syrup for a family of 6. A massive batch of fried dough cost about 15 cents to make. While this survives in the form of Native American fry bread, the working-class version, what grandmothers simply called fried dough, has largely vanished as we traded our cast iron skillets for microwave buttons. The Great Snack Shift. Part 3. Here is the part of the story the snack food giants don't like to discuss. In 1978, Frito-Lay, Nabisco, and General Mills, along with 6 other major snack manufacturers, lobbied successfully against nutrition labeling requirements. Their reasoning was simple. If you compared a bag of processed chips to a tomato sandwich or a piece of fried dough, the ingredient list for the chips was terrifying. The poor man's snacks of the 1970s had ingredient lists you could recite from memory because you made them yourself. Flour, salt, water, peanut butter, bread, mayo. So the industry did not compete on transparency. It competed on volume, on color, on cartoon mascots, and on the sheer velocity of advertising directed at children. By 1980, the average American child had seen 20,000 snack food commercials. Not one of those commercials was for sugar bread or crackers from a glass jar. The forgetting was not accidental. Number 9. Saltines and butter. This required real butter, not margarine. Even when families were struggling, many believed in the importance of the real thing for this specific snack. You'd use a table knife to work the butter into the tiny holes of the saltine until it was perfectly integrated. The butter mellowed the sharp salt of the cracker, while the cracker provided a structural crunch for the fat. A box of saltines was 39 cents, and a pound of butter was 77 cents. A single sleeve and 1 stick of butter could provide 3 days of afternoon snacks for an entire family. It is a combination that is still as satisfying today as it was 50 years ago. Yet almost nobody thinks to make it. Number 8. Pickle sandwiches. White bread, a generous spread of yellow mustard, and several dill pickle slices. That was the whole show. The sharp acid of the vinegar and the tang of the mustard provided a sensory wake-up call that more expensive snacks couldn't match. A jar of pickles was 39 cents, and mustard was 25 cents. This was the snack for when the refrigerator was devoid of protein. No meat, no cheese, nothing. Working men often packed pickle sandwiches in brown paper bags for job sites because, unlike mayonnaise-based sandwiches, they wouldn't spoil in the heat. It's a humble, effective sandwich that never got its own cookbook chapter, but it's still waiting there in the pantry. Number 7. Dry ramen noodles. When Top Ramen first hit American grocery store shelves in the mid-1970s, it cost 10 cents a package. It didn't take long for kids to realize that you didn't actually have to cook them. You'd crush the dried noodle block while it was still inside the bag, tear open the seasoning packet, and shake it over the shards. You ate them like chips, straight out of the plastic. 2 packages cost 20 cents and could keep 4 children occupied and fed for 20 minutes. It was the quintessential latchkey kid snack. The thing you ate when mom wasn't getting home until 6:00 p.m. It had a specific, salty desperation to it that no gourmet ramen bowl has ever managed to replicate. Number 6. Brown sugar sandwiches. While sugar bread used white sugar and margarine, the brown sugar sandwich required real butter for the chemistry to work. You'd pack a thick layer of brown sugar over a buttered slice of white bread, where the molasses-heavy sugar met the butter. It would dissolve into a rich, dark paste that tasted like a glaze. A box of Domino brown sugar was 35 cents in 1974. Families who baked kept it on hand. And children quickly learned that it was the key to a snack that felt almost extravagant. It was the signature of 70s working-class cooking, finding a way to make the simplest pantry staples feel like a luxury. Number 5. Sardines on crackers. A tin of King Oscar sardines in olive oil cost 39 cents in 1975. Inside were 6 to 8 small fish. Their bones softened until they were completely edible. You'd place one fish on a Ritz cracker and add a squirt of yellow mustard. Image of a sardine on a cracker with a dot of yellow mustard. By modern standards, this was an incredibly healthy snack, loaded with calcium and omega-3s, but in the 70s, it was just a correct way to eat. The flavor was assertive and powerful, not for the faint of heart. The people who grew up eating sardines didn't think of it as poor people food. They thought of it as a solid, honest meal. That confidence was lost when American taste shifted toward the mild and the highly processed. Number 4. Fried Spam slices. In 1973, a single can cost 79 cents, and it was enough to feed a family snacking for 2 days. Raw Spam is fine. Fried Spam is something else entirely. The brown surface delivered concentrated, almost pecan-y flavor in a way the cold version never could. Hawaii never abandoned this tradition. The rest of America walked away as incomes rose and Spam became a punchline. The punchline was wrong. The fried Spam was right. Number 3. Broiled Velveeta on Ritz. Ritz crackers are arranged on a baking sheet. Thin slices of Velveeta, costing about $1.19 for a 2-pound block in 1975, are placed on each cracker. They go under the broiler for 60 seconds exactly. Velveeta melts at a lower temperature than real cheese. And when it hits a hot Ritz cracker, it does not just melt, it fuses. The top blisters slightly, going golden at the peaks. The edge, where cheese meets cracker crisps, to something almost like the edge of a grilled cheese sandwich. The entire experience. The crunch, the velvet interior. The slight char is a textural event that modern snack companies have spent 50 years trying to replicate in a bag. Nobody has made it because you cannot engineer the 60 seconds under the broiler. You cannot package the moment when you pull the tray and feel the heat off the pan. This snack was real. It costs pennies. And the fact that it has been replaced by a bag of processed crackers is one of the minor tragedies of American food history. Number 2. Ants on a log. While the modern version still exists, the 1970s original was more of a kitchen counter activity than a pre-packaged snack. It was celery, peanut butter, and raisins. But the variations were endless. Some families used cream cheese. Others used dried apricots cut into tiny pieces. In the early 70s, school nutritionists actually circulated recipe cards for this, recommending it as a healthy option at just 8 cents per child. You didn't buy pre-cut celery from a bag. You pulled a bunch from the fridge, strings and all, and filled it yourself while talking to your siblings. It was an interactive experience that kept kids busy and fed on a shoestring budget. Number 1. Stovetop popcorn. Before the microwave bag and the movie theater butter flavoring, there was the heavy pot on the stovetop. You'd add 2 tablespoons of Crisco, a half cup of kernels, and a lid that would begin to rattle as the corn popped. A bag of kernels cost 35 cents in 1972 and would last for nearly 2 months of movie nights. Image of a heavy metal pot on a gas stove with popcorn kernels starting to pop. When the popping slowed to 1 every 3 seconds, you pulled the pot and tipped it into the largest bowl in the house. Always the largest bowl because it had to be the largest bowl. And poured real melted butter over the top and shook on the lorries. The butter soaked in unevenly. Some kernels were heavily coated, becoming salty and rich. The bowl went to the center of the family and everyone reached in at the same time. And Saturday night in America in 1974 tasted like that. The 1980s brought microwave popcorn, which was faster and more convenient. But it lost the ritual. It lost the rattling lid, the smell of the Crisco, and the family standing together in the kitchen watching it happen. Stovetop popcorn didn't just taste like corn. It tasted like the whole decade. Warm and imperfect and unmistakably real. Make one of these this week. Try the cinnamon sugar toast under the broiler, or the fried bologna cups in a dry skillet. You won't be embarrassed by the result. What will happen is this. You will take a bite, and for a brief moment, you will be transported back to a kitchen you might not even consciously remember. You'll realize that the 1970s didn't produce poor food. They produced real food that was fast, cheap, and honest because there was no other choice. Tell me in the comments which of these you're making first. Because this knowledge should not be allowed to disappear with the generation that invented it,